established and created by the federal government. Joining us now, Colorado's Democratic Congresswoman Diana DeGette. Congresswoman DeGette is co-chair of the Congressional Pro-Choice Caucus. And Congresswoman, it is a pleasure to have you back with us. How do you navigate a political reality which it feels like it's almost trying to, I feel like we're playing a shell game here, where all of a sudden we're saying, well, because the exchange is paid for by the government, now everything sold inside that store, if you will, even if it's privately sold and privately purchased, is subject to the Hyde Amendment-like restrictions.
Well, look, we worked all summer long on a compromise. The pro-choice Democrats and the pro-life Democrats worked on a compromise. And in the base bill, it says no federal funds shall be used for abortion. That's current law. That's the Hyde Amendment. And then what happened was, in the last couple of days before the bill passed, Bart Stupak and Stupak-Pitts and some others suddenly announced what you just said, that they were going to take these restrictions much farther. So it's not just preserving law, which is the Hyde Amendment. It's going much, much further and saying if a middle-class woman who's a small business owner wants to take her own money and buy an insurance policy in the public option, for example, because she can't get insurance, she will not be entitled to get a full range of reproductive services. That is far beyond anything we've ever had. And frankly, I was really relieved to hear what the president said yesterday, because I agree completely with what he's saying, and I think in fact that we should be able to come up with a compromise. If people don't think that the Hyde language we have in the base bill is strong enough, we're happy to negotiate on that, but we're not going to be part of a expansion of restrictions on a woman's right to choose that are unequaled by anything we've seen in our careers.
How much was this, do you think, a political opportunity by anti-abortion activists who saw this sort of, it's almost a loophole, the opportunity to use the fact that federal money is being used to set up a potential exchange as an opportunity to push back against women's reproductive rights?
I think it's a pretty flimsy excuse to try to say that but once it's set up, people with their private dollars cannot buy insurance. And in Energy and Commerce Committee, which is my committee, we actually put language together that said we're going to segregate all federal funds, both in the public option and in the exchange, so that no insurance policies that involve abortion will ever be paid for with federal funds.
So if the only issue is that federal dollars are being used to actually set up an insurance exchange, to build the house in which the private insurance can be bought and sold, couldn't you simply pay for the cost of setting up that exchange by charging a fee on the exchange, and then you basically fund the exchange with private dollars and you get out of this situation altogether?
Well, and then you can put an accounting technique in place that lets people send their premiums so that they don't go through the federal government. The language can be worked out, and I feel that now with the president's support of this, it will be worked out. I also think that this was a last-minute situation that came up, and I think many members were confused because this was billed to them as just simply applying Hyde to this legislation. And a lot of members who hadn't been involved in this for a long time, they didn't realize how much farther the restrictions went than current law.
Yeah, I think that's telling, though, when you look at the voter base in health care in general, and the concern that as legislation comes through, and abortion is perhaps the greatest flashpoint issue, but to the extent to which the politicians truly understand the legislation they are voting on, when it has as much of an impact and as many ripples as it does. Do you feel that the politicians are in general fully understanding the legislation?
I'll tell you, I've been in Congress for 13 years, and I have never seen a bill that was as vetted as this one, up until this last-minute abortion amendment. But for everything else, we had hour upon hour of caucus meetings where we went through the bill. There were briefings. There were discussions. I think that we did. Certainly, I knew the bill, and I think my colleagues who aren't on the key committees also knew the bill. This was something that sprang up at the end. We really did get ambushed by the anti-choice Democrats and the Republicans. You know, even the Republicans who call themselves pro-choice voted for this amendment just to gum up the works. So this was a last-minute ploy, but I think once cooler heads prevail, then we'll be able to get the appropriate language that says no federal funds for abortion, which is the current law, but we'll be able to preserve women's rights to buy insurance with their own private money.
All right, Congresswoman DeGette, thank you so much for the conversation and the time this morning. We appreciate it. With us now, Nancy